start. And then we will close with a vote of thanks and closing remarks. But before we proceed, I would like you to please engage with the discussion as on the conference online and then also on our social media handles. We would have, if you direct your attention to the chat box, we have our handles up there. Thank you very much. And please don't forget to tag hashtag SSC 2021. That's the Sahel Scholars Conference 2021. So just a few housekeeping rules now before we crack on with the event. So please, firstly, feel free to use the expression buttons at the bottom of your screen so that you could raise your hand or wave or thumbs up or applause, however you feel like addressing. And then we encourage all attendees to really participate and send in your questions utilizing your chat box. And when you're sending in your questions, please direct it to Q&A or Sahel Consulting, as you would see on your chat box. And please refrain from posting anything in the chat that's unrelated to the event, because we very much like to keep on top of your questions. So if there are unrelated chats, it would get missing. And when you're in your breakout sessions, please kindly respect the group's time so that we can actually get every question in and answered. And also the Sahel Scholars Conference Organizing Committee are available to you. Please use your chat box and then you can ask any questions directed at us. Thank you very much. So at this juncture, I would like to kick off the program with opening remarks from Remy Bordurin, who is the operating partner at Sahel Capital Agribusiness Managers Limited. Over to you, Mr. Remy.
Thanks, Aisha. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are joining this conference today across Africa and indeed the world. I'm honored to welcome you to the 2001 Sahel Scholars Conference, tagged Shaping the Future of Food in Africa, the Role of African Youths. Sahel Scholars Conference promises to be engaging, informative, and educative, and we believe motivational also for everyone here today towards the imperatives of food, nutrition, agribusiness in and across Africa. The Sahel Scholars Conference is part of our larger annual scholars program. Since 2017, Sahel and Nourishing Africa continue to provide internship, scholarship opportunities to students, and also mentoring to food and agripreneurs across Africa and across various places where we have people collaborating with us. I want to say many thanks to our speakers and panelists who have chosen and have given their time to be part of the program today, and also to everyone here today who are participating and will benefit from the discussions and all the activities that we have today. Without further ado, please sit back as we delve into the role of African youths shaping the future of food in Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Remy, for the wonderful opening remarks. We would like to now take this opportunity to introduce you to the Sahel family. I would like to hand over now to Ife Odua, who's a consultant at Sahel Consulting. She would kick us off with a short video so that you can get more insights into our activities, our goals, and our values, and then followed by a short presentation. Over to you, Ife.
Sahel Consulting Agriculture and Nutrition Limited is a leading management consulting firm committed to unlocking Africa's agriculture and nutrition potential through tailored, innovative, and market-based research, strategic advisory services, training, and project implementation, thereby impacting communities and achieving sustainable growth. Sahel Consulting's vision is to be recognized as the most trusted consulting partner and point of reference in the African agriculture and nutrition landscape, integral to building effective and efficient value chains and attaining food security. Sahel Capital Agribusiness Managers Limited is a food and agriculture-focused private equity firm which invests in agribusinesses in West Africa. Sahel Capital has deployed capital across a broad range of value chains, partnering with founders and management teams to scale their companies. Sahel Capital's ethos is anchored on providing capital, leveraging knowledge, building companies, generating returns, and impacting lives. Its vision is to be recognized as the foremost food and agriculture private investment firm in Africa. There are emerging groups of dynamic, visionary, and committed entrepreneurs driving the African agriculture and food landscapes. Yet many of them struggle for survival in very difficult and often hostile environments. Agripreneurs, as we refer to them, struggle to access funding, advertising opportunities, data, information, and markets when trying to scale their businesses. As a direct response to their needs, Sahel Consulting Agriculture and Nutrition Limited, in partnership with the MasterCard Foundation, launched Nourishing Africa in September 2019. 11 months later, Nourishing Africa was fully incorporated and became an independent organization on the 11th of June 2020, with the mandate of equipping and connecting agri-SMEs across Africa. As such, Nourishing Africa is a knowledge and membership platform aimed at helping agri-food entrepreneurs from farm to fork scale their businesses across the continent. Currently supporting over 1,000 African agri-businesses across 34 countries, Nourishing Africa's mission is to drive the profitable and sustainable growth of the African agriculture and food landscapes by attracting, empowering, equipping, connecting, and celebrating over 1 million dynamic and innovative young agri-food entrepreneurs.
Welcome again, everyone. Following the short video on the three companies hosting this event, Sahel Capital, Sahel Consulting, and Nourishing Africa, I will be providing some additional details on our work as well as a background on the Sahel Scholars Conference. As our moderator Aisha mentioned, my name is Ifeoluwa Olorinigba, and I'm a consultant at Sahel Consulting Agriculture and Nutrition Limited. Starting with Sahel Consulting Agriculture and Nutrition Limited, Sahel Consulting is a management consulting firm that works across Africa to transform the agriculture and nutrition landscapes. Sahel Consulting provides a range of services, including consulting support, policy consulting, training support for agribusinesses to stakeholders in the sector, such as government agencies, private sector companies, international development organizations. We also have experience working in a range of countries in Africa, and we are located in Nigeria with 2 offices in Lagos and in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. And we implement a range of projects across the food and agriculture landscape in Africa. One of our projects is focused on advancing local dairy development in Nigeria with the aim to catalyze the local dairy sector in Nigeria in a way that improves the livelihoods, productivity, nutrition, and empowerment of smallholder dairy farmers and in communities in which they live. The program, which is also referred to as Aldin, is a 5-year program funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, commenced in 2020 and works across 5 states in Nigeria. Aldin focuses on 6 components: the organization of farmers, infrastructure development, productivity improvement, financial inclusion and income support, training and extension, advocacy and behavior change, and policy advocacy to support the thriving dairy sector in Nigeria. We also work with 5 dairy processors across the project states and 2 implementing partners with support from state and federal governments. On another program, the Collaborative Seed Program, we work with a consortium of partners to enhance the performance of the seed sector in Nigeria. Also known as the CSP, the program is designed to contribute towards improving the sustainable income, food and nutrition security of rural households in Nigeria by improving farmers' access to and use of quality seed of improved varieties. The CSP also draws on key areas from the National Seed Roadmap of Nigeria to achieve its aim. The program focuses on 8 key topics to achieve 4 major outcomes, and program outcomes include enhanced capacity of the seed sector, enhanced efficiency, fairness, and transparency of seed value chains and seed markets, enhanced coordination among stakeholders, and enhanced rules and systems that govern seed markets, production systems, and service delivery. Sahel Consulting is also an implementing partner on a program that aims to transform the cassava seed sector in Nigeria and Tanzania. The program is called Building an Economically Sustainable and Integrated Cassava Seed System, also known as BASICS, and it's in its second phase, also funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, with the overarching goal to provide farmers with access to affordable, quality-assured seeds of cassava varieties in demand by local food and processor markets. BASICS has 6 components, and Sahel Consulting is implementing the components on the development of processor-associated seed system model. And this model supports cassava processors to establish a rapid seed multiplication unit to produce quality cassava stems for their use and the use of their outgrowers who they may engage, to ensure the production of quality cassava roots for the operations of processors. And key benefits to these processors include greater control over their cassava root supply, increased quality of root sources for processing, and also higher yield and output. Sahel Consulting is currently providing support to 4 processors across 2 states in Nigeria. The second company in the group, Sahel Capital Agribusiness Managers Limited, is a private equity firm in Lagos, Nigeria that provides capital for businesses in the agriculture sector. Sahel Capital has a range of portfolio companies located across the various states in Nigeria, and it's focused on the development of agriculture sector through its investments. Sahel Capital is also the fund manager of the Fund for Agricultural Finance in Nigeria, referred to as FAFIN. FAFIN, with a size of $65.9 million was launched in 2014 and invests in high growth enterprises across the agriculture sector in Nigeria. In addition to providing funding, FAFIN also has a technical assistance facility to provide capacity building support to portfolio companies. FAFIN is jointly sponsored by the German government, the Nigerian government through the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, and the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority. Other institutions such as the CDC Group, African Development Bank, and the Dutch Good Growth Fund also provide investment capital to the fund. FAFIN currently invests in companies in Nigeria across various value chains, including poultry, rice, dairy, cassava, shea butter, and food packaging materials. The third company, Nourishing Africa, is a knowledge and membership platform aimed at helping agri-food SMEs scale their businesses across the continent. And Nourishing Africa does this through 3 key components. The first is through its membership portal, which is aimed at building a community of agripreneurs, as well as agriculture enthusiasts, where we are also able to bring stakeholders from various value chains together to provide resources, knowledge, data, or information, as well as connect them with one another, to ensure that they're able to partner to scale, share ideas, and engage in peer learnings. We also have a range of knowledge and capacity building initiatives where we provide workshops and training on critical and timely changes and structures within the agribusiness and agricultural food space. Then we have support programs where we partner with development organizations to develop and implement programs that are aimed at helping SMEs scale. One example of our support program is the Entrepreneur Support Program, where we are currently running in Nigeria in partnership with the MasterCard Foundation and the United States African Development Foundation. The program is currently training over 1,000 agribusinesses. It's providing finance for them to pivot and rebuild as a result of COVID-19. And we had over 30,000 applications, and majority of the participants in this program are women-led businesses across 11 states in Nigeria. As previously stated, we have a range of trainings, and we also have content on the hub aimed at providing quick and useful information such as podcasts, elements such as Ask an Expert, where entrepreneurs are able to ask critical questions. We also host an event called First Thursdays, which is a monthly virtual networking session where we provide a platform for entrepreneurs to connect with one another, connect with experts, as well as to learn through various topics each month. And when it comes to our reach, here are some numbers. We directly support over 1,100 agribusinesses across 35 African countries. And through the help of many of our partners, we've also reached over 30,000 stakeholders who are now part of our community. As a group, we're also committed to giving back to the communities around us, and we do this through our corporate shared values. For us, corporate shared values, which we also refer to as CSV, means the implementation of programs that build the capacity of individuals and advance social conditions in communities around us. It also means partnerships and organizations with shared values to undertake programs that solve societal needs, as well as the inclusion of the underserved and vulnerable population. And each year we implement capacity building and humanitarian projects that create sustainable values in communities around us. And there are two key programs under our CSB, the Community Empowerment Programs and the Sahel Scholars Program. The objective of the Community Empowerment Program is to impact communities through the implementation of humanitarian projects. And under our Sahel Scholars Programs, our objectives are to provide mentoring, internships, and scholarships for top performing students in faculties of agriculture, to organize annual conferences towards generating awareness and interest in agribusiness. And the Sahel Scholars Conference is one of the components of the Sahel Scholars Program. Our community development programs have cut across impact areas of education, health, and environment. And here are some pictures. Our staff and the companies are committed to giving back, and these programs usually involve fundraising from our staff, and the companies match the amount raised by staff by 100 to 200% to cover the cost of implementing these programs in our communities. The second component of our CSB was introduced in 2017, which is the Sahel Scholars Program. And since then, we've organized 8 conferences across 60 universities in Nigeria, with 1 virtual conference organized last year due to restrictions from COVID. We've also had over 300,000 participants at our conferences since 2017. We've engaged 9 scholars for internships at our offices and have provided scholarships to 8 students. And last year, for the first time, we also had a conference for educators in the agriculture sector. On this slide, here are just some pictures from our physical conferences over 3 universities since 2017. There's some of the pictures with the Sahel team and some of the conference participants. And on this slide are also pictures from some of our past scholars during their internship at our offices. And at this point, I would like to state again how delighted we are that you have joined us for the conference this year to contribute to the discussion on shaping the future of food in Africa, emphasizing the role of the youth. Thank you very much for listening. I will now hand over to Aisha, our moderator for this conference, for the next item on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ife. The great work that the Sahel Scholars Program is doing to support young persons is indeed commendable. I would encourage every participant here to join the Nourishing Africa Hub to connect with the Nourishing Africa community, and then also go online to check out the activities of the Sahel Consulting and Sahel Capital, so that you can see and check in how you can benefit from the numerous opportunities. Again, we will be sharing links to our social media and our website in the chat box as we go along. Don't forget to check that. At this particular moment, we are delighted to welcome Mr. Obi Ozo, who is the CEO and co-founder of Kobo 360, to give our keynote address. I think Mr. Ozo is having a few technical challenges and having a hard time joining, so I will go ahead and introduce Mr. Ozo while he is trying to join. So, as mentioned, he's the CEO and founder of Kobo 360. Mr. Obi has over 6 years experience of logistics and supply chain management, and he manages all aspects of Kobo 360. Kobo 360 is a company launched in 2016 and now is Africa's fastest growing digital logistics platform. And is building a global logistics operating system, a blockchain-enabled platform to power trade across the African continent. Mr. Ozo completed his biochemistry degree at the University of Michigan, after which he went on to graduate from Wharton School of Business. He worked at JP Morgan as an investment banker before becoming the operations coordinator at Uber Nigeria. In 2019, he was named the Innovator of the Year and Young Business Leader of the Year at the CNBC All Africa Business Leaders Award. In 2020, alongside his co-founder, Ife Oyedele II, was selected to be a part of Endeavor's global network of high-impact entrepreneurs. Mr. Obi was also named one of Fortune magazine's 40 under 40 global leaders in technology. So if you could please bear with us for a few more seconds while our keynote speaker joins. A few more seconds. Thank you. Okay, so in the interest of time, let us move on to the next item on the agenda. So we would like to now deep dive into the first main action of the event, and which is our first panel to discuss leveraging innovation and technology, how young people are creating the food ecosystems of the future. We have, as we mentioned earlier, a lineup of speakers who are innovative and making groundbreaking strides in the agriculture sector in Africa. I will now hand over to the moderator for this session, Mr. Deji Adebuswe, Principal at Sahel Capital. He will introduce each of the panelists, and then we'll go into the session. Please remember to use your Q&A. Please remember that the Q&A, there's a Sahel Consulting Q&A participant online. Please direct all your questions towards that participant. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Deji.
Thank you very much, Aisha. And good morning, everyone. And once again, welcome to the annual Sahel Scholars Conference. My name is Deji Adebuswe. I'm a principal with Sahel Capital, and I'll be moderating our first panel for today. I have an incredible set of speakers on this panel, and together we'll be discussing the subject, leveraging innovation and technology, how young people are creating the food ecosystems of the future. And like Aisha mentioned earlier, please don't forget to drop your questions in the chat box, and we'll try to take as many of them as possible. So I will start by introducing our set of panelists that will be joining me on this panel today. And I'll be starting with the co-founder and CEO of Food Locker, Femi Aiki. Femi is a technology entrepreneur and is the co-founder and CEO of Food Locker, which is the first African startup to break into the prestigious Thrive SVG Startup Accelerator that focuses on agtech in Silicon Valley. Prior experience, he has built driverless trains in Saudi Arabia and Italy. He has developed algorithms, commission and test complex products and platforms. He has lived and worked on 4 continents, and he has won several awards, including the first prize at the Impulse Accelerator in 2020. He has won the first prize at the African Development Bank's Agri-Pitch competition also in 2020, and also the first prize at the Thrive Agri-Food Africa Challenge just this year. Femi is a first-class graduate of chemical engineering at the Obafemi Awolowo University. He has a master's degree from Imperial College in London and a corporate master degree from Fimi Chenika, called Leonardo's SPA, Think Master, and he also has an MBA from SA Business School in Spain. Femi, welcome to the panel.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining. We'll go to our second panelist, Alima Bawa. Alima is a co-founder and COO of Cow Tribe. Cow Tribe is Ghana's first mobile-enabled on-demand service platform for veterinary extension. The mobile technology enables millions of farmers in remote places to request for veterinary services using their cell phones and enjoy door-to-door delivery through a network of certified veterinarians. Prior to Cow Tribe, Alima was a journalist focusing on documenting the struggles of rural women in Ghana. She is a recent recipient of an Obama Foundation African Leaders Fellowship. Alima, welcome to the panel this morning. Okay, not sure if Alima has joined yet, but let's move on to the next panelist, who is Bethlehem Dejene. She's the founder and CEO of Zafri Papers. Bethlehem is a motivated individual, and she has strong professional experience in economics and research. She's very passionate about the environment, and that led to the founding of Zafri Papers, a company that makes 100% tree-free paper pulp and paper products using agro waste. She currently works in Ethiopia and Zambia, following a Pan-African business model aimed to duplicate Zafri Papers. She's aiming to duplicate Zafri Papers in different African countries. She's currently the CEO of Zafri Paper. So Bethlehem, welcome to the panel this morning. I hope Bethlehem is also on the line. Okay, so I mean, we will delve right in while we wait for the other panelists to join us. So once again, Femi, welcome, and please, to all those who are listening in, don't forget to drop your questions in as we go on. Let me start by asking you, Femi. The reality, the reason why you're here today is because you are solving a major problem, and your activity has one way or the other caught the eyes of the world in one form or the other. So let me ask, what problem or problems are you actually solving, and then what role has that leaning towards innovation and technology played in helping you address those problems?
All right, thank you very much, DG, and thank you everybody for listening in. So essentially, Africa is assumed to have about a $350 billion market for food. It's projected to grow to over $1 trillion by 2030. Unfortunately, this market is served by over 250 million smallholder farmers who essentially lack almost everything that's required for them to produce effectively. Now, this basically then means that while the farmers are striving, we have huge disconnects between supply side and demand side. So you have a big market that is underserved, and therefore when you look at the map of the world in terms of how food is supplied to Africa, you see that the rest of the world is actually feeding Africa. So this is the problem I'm trying to solve. How do we ensure that there's food security in Africa? How do we ensure that a typical African who was born to parents who don't have money or who didn't get educated essentially does not stand at a disadvantage just because they were born in Africa? So the core issue is how do we fix food insecurity? How do we ensure that there's zero hunger? How do we ensure that the people producing actually have value for what they're producing? And we're using technology to solve this kind of problem.
Thanks, Femi. That's quite interesting, and I think we all can embrace that fact that there is a huge, food security problem in Africa that needs to be addressed. But I think you've also employed technology in very interesting ways. You started a retail outlet, a physical outlet, then you layered on that e-commerce, and then sometimes when I even look at your WhatsApp status, I see things like Nash Equilibrium, and I'm wondering, how complex can technology be in driving, agriculture, growth in Africa. So can you just walk us through how, technology is enabling, your own world of solving agriculture problems in Africa?
Thank you very much, DG. And maybe for those who don't know, DG and I were in the same undergrad program, so he knows that we both come from a tech engineering background. Essentially, technology for the agricultural sector has gone much further ahead than what we think it really is. So currently, one of the challenges we face is, and if you speak especially with growers in the United States, they'll tell you one of their biggest problems is labor. How do you then use technology to sort of hack labor to ensure that you can produce efficiently and you can have high yields, but at the same time, have the right kind of people who can produce for you. So you have everything from mechanization for harvesting technology. So you'd see technologies that essentially help people to harvest oranges and grapes, etc., at scale. So you'd essentially see mechanized pieces of equipment that go to the trees and they shake the trees and they basically collect all the fruits that come from the trees. You have technology that helps to monitor soil water content, soil temperature data, and essentially transmits this data remotely such that you can then trigger, for example, irrigation systems. At Food Locker, one of the top things we've been able to do has been to connect the smallholder farmer base to lenders. So basically, a typical farming community doesn't have internet. The farmer cannot even use a smartphone. So what we have done is to essentially compress all the information that the farmer has to transmit to a lender through SMS. So through very simple text messaging technology, the farmer basically can either communicate by themselves, come together, or we've come up with a very simple reporting program that allows a farmer to be able to submit very simple data. It could be the height of the crops, it could be the weight of their poultry birds, it could be the weight of cattle, and essentially trying to build the database that allows a bank to then look at their yield potential or their revenue potential or their cost profile to say this farmer is credit worthy or it's not. With this same data set, you can then start optimizing the yield. So for example, when we produce poultry, on a day-to-day basis, we're actually optimizing the growth. We call it weight optimization or protein content optimization, because on a day-to-day basis, you're expected to hit a particular weight expectation for the birds you're carrying. Technology has gone as far as we have some partners through Thrive, for example, who essentially use technology to monitor the growth of trees or of tree crops. So if you've got your cacao or you've got your avocados, you can actually monitor how fast they're growing. There's a broad range already. You can trigger irrigation systems to just, support crops based on what's going on. So a lot of work is going on through that method.
That's quite fascinating, Femi. And one of the things you mentioned, the work you're doing with smallholder farmers, trying to help them optimize their production and productivity. Probably even help them get good credit rating so that they can gain access to finance. But one of the things that I believe is missing in that part of the market is the sophistication of the smallholder farmers, which makes it quite difficult to market, product, services, and even technology to them. So how have you been, overcoming that hurdle, the lack of sophistication, minimum education? How can you manage that level of that level of discrepancy between them and technology?
Yeah, so great question. I don't think there's enough capital or enough time and resources to go and start educating farmers about, this is how you need to use a smartphone, or this is how you need to fly a drone. There's no time for this. Basically, what we have to do is to then connect young people who are educated to the smallholder farmers.
Femi, sorry, just to pause your thinking there. Yeah. I just quickly want to welcome, one of the other, he should have been the speaker on the previous panel, but we'll just invite him to join you on this panel. That's the CEO of Kobo 360, Obi. So Obi, welcome. Please, if you can just join the panel, please let us, the organizers, please let him in. Okay, so I think while he's joining, Aki, you can go on.
Yeah, so essentially the level of sophistication of the smallholder farmer is not going to improve today or tomorrow. The educational deficiencies are already there. We can't change that. We can't go in and say you want to deploy mass literacy systems for over 250 million smallholder farmers in Africa. You're never going to get any results, and we don't even have the time. So by 2040, the population of Africa is going to double, and therefore we need to very, very quickly go and solve this problem. So which then creates opportunities for folks who are already educated. So folks who have already studied agriculture, or folks who are already interested in agriculture, but are interested in technology of agriculture. Now they then form the interface between the smallholder farmers who are not sophisticated and the market that is more sophisticated. So typically banks, more sophisticated, they're looking for charts, they're looking for properly prepared credit rating data. They're looking for properly prepared business plans. You then have smallholder farmers at the other end. You have other people who are educated already who can support the smallholders. And we saw this quite elaborately in Morocco, for example. OCP Africa in Morocco deploys, people who studied agronomy, agricultural engineering, etc., deploy them to the production communities to go and support the smallholder farmers with this interface or with this broken link between them and the more sophisticated users. Now, in addition, we also then currently have solutions that are simple to use, where the farmer doesn't need to be super smart or super educated to use. So for example, if you put in an IoT sensor to monitor temperature in a pen or to monitor soil water content on a farm, this doesn't require the farmer to, by themselves know how the IoT sensor works. So there are two different solution approaches. In addition, then we use text messaging. As long as a farmer can speak in any language or they can type in any language, they sometimes could be able to use this. If they cannot, then we put in a cluster manager who then supports maybe 7 to 10 farmers, and they're able to help them to sort of interpret production programs. They're able to help them to understand what they need to do on a periodic basis, etc. Oh, I think Alima is here already. Yeah. Welcome, Alima.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome, Alima. Thanks for joining. And Obi, thank you very much also for joining. The panel is getting broader, and so I will pivot a bit from you, Femi, and go to Obi. Obi, are you? I'm not sure I can see you. Do we still have Obi online? Yes. Welcome.
Yes.
The signature red art is something I always look out for to be sure that you're here. So let me start by asking, welcome first of all. Femi has talked a lot about how we're solving the problem with smallholder farmers and helping them to gain access to market, helping to improve productivity and provide financing to them. But this is where you come in, right? There's that last mile movement. Well, not exactly last mile. You're moving goods across the country and you're optimizing that with technology. And if there's anything, the logistics sector is one of the areas that is grossly lacking in the country, especially with respect to agricultural produce. What are the major challenges that you've seen as you are trying to optimize technology, that's a problem using technology? What are the major problems that you see that keeps popping up, and how have you been addressing them over the last couple of years?
Yeah, thank you very much. I was sorry I was late a little bit. So I think one of the biggest challenges is that technology is new to us, so the users are not very conversant. So the level of work that requires to build an adoptable technology platform is way higher in this continent. But the good thing is that if you spend the time and resources to do that, it can scale any place in the world. And for us, we've been able to do that. The technology we built in Nigeria is now in 7 other African countries. And I'll be happy to delve, of course, deeper into, of course, I'm not an expert in agriculture, but we interface with agriculture a lot. We interface with agriculture a lot. So we are moving the inputs when most of them are imported and few of them that are produced in Nigeria, in Port Harcourt, we move that, right, to different parts of the country. And then, of course, we pick up the raw material or the harvest to different factories and also to different open markets and supermarkets after harvest. So we do have a good idea of what is going on in that value chain. And there are certain areas that I see are huge bottlenecks, right? One of that is actually supply chain. I think, to me, apart from funding, and few policy that our government needs to do on land use, I think the other challenge there is really logistics, right? Because we still lose our produce due to logistics issues, right? And what are we doing about it? What we're doing about it is we're working with IFC. There's a fund that we set up where we're building what we call sustainable cooling project. And we're piloting it here in Nigeria for Africa. And if it works, we'll scale it to other places. And that also requires, of course, infrastructure, building those cold chain solutions, deploying the mobile ones that will be close to different farmsteads, bringing the cold vans, right, enough of them that will carry things, and try to do this in a way that is affordable. Remember today, if you carry a low value commodity through cold chain, it's basically unsustainable. You won't actually be able to, people can afford it. Today, we can't carry tomato in cold chain in Nigeria. How? If we carry tomato in cold chain, you'll buy one piece of tomato for 1,000 naira. Because the technology has not actually scaled in Nigeria, right? Because it's just so expensive. There is no cooling and different things. So that's part of the thing we need to work on, because with that, you increase farmers' earnings, right? And you have to think of this thing in a sustainable manner. If farmers can save on 48% of their harvest, then they actually have reason to be in agriculture. Like, is economically sustainable? They will be there, right? If we are not having, if we solve some of the bottlenecks, even in bringing the inputs, the input price can come down by 15%, right? The cost of logistics on it will just come down. If it comes down, they're able to farm more, they're able to actually see it as an economically viable way for their own small economies, right? So, and then of course, some of the key thing is also education, and even on our platform, connecting them to actually buyers. And like, there is some of the things that we can actually do because we know what everybody requires, because we're going to their factories on different things. So being able to bring that visibility in that space, the insurance of it, actually saving them. Today, most people are scared. Most farmers cannot bring their tomato to Lagos or to Port Harcourt because they are worried, what if it damages on the road? So because of that, they will sell it so cheap, right, in their home market, and then they leave the money for the middlemen who make majority of the money. So the people that needs to make the money are not making the money, which means that there is no incentive to actually scale, right? But this is something that actually a coaching and an insurance product can actually solve, right? And it's something that we're designing now, but we can't solve with just insurance. You need that coaching infrastructure so that you are also not overly exposed.
Yeah.
Happy to go in depth in new areas.
One question before I go to Alima Obi. You touched on a very sensitive subject, and I realized that a lot of entrepreneurs in Africa in the ag sector are solving so many problems. You start a business and you are solving all the problems across the entire value chain for no fault of yours, right? Just because there are different gaps along that entire value chain, which if you don't solve, you will not be able to thrive. So it raises the question for me: we are building innovation, you are building technology. What is the minimum requirement in terms of the available infrastructure that needs to be in place to make you a profitable venture? Just thinking about it now, and for all the other scholars that are listening and they're wondering, all about the myriads of problems that they need to solve across the entire value chain, and that even becomes, a chain on their leg to move because they are worried that, how can I solve all these problems? How have you been able to think through that and overcome that?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of opportunities. I don't look at them as problems. As an entrepreneur across Nigeria and Africa, there are a lot of opportunities. And one of the key things for any African entrepreneur is discipline and focus. You have to be disciplined and focused. There's too much things to do, right? And what we've done is, when we started, we focused on long haul. Can we get good at moving food trailer loads, just as you see them on trucks every time, from point A to point B in Nigeria, right? And that's what we did. In fact, our first route was east, moving from Lagos to Onitsha, Aba, Port Harcourt. We did that very well. We now opened the northwest, actually going to Kano, Gusau. Then from there, we opened north central. And then we are now doing west. And then we solved Nigeria. Then just on one particular product. You can't solve all the problems. Each problem is a company in Nigeria. Like, each of the problem you have can actually build multi-billion-dollar company. So it's impossible for you to build all those things, right? So then you're going to look at partnerships. You should only solve the one that are serious hindrance to scale for you, right? For us, financing has been a big problem because truck owners cannot wait to get paid by like 30 days from a Unilever, right? They can't wait for 30 days. So we had to build that financing business using the credit score or their credit score on the platform to be able to basically pay them after delivery instead of waiting for 30 days, right? So it's because we had to, and then there is actually no financing company. There's no real scalable financing company in Nigeria that can finance like $20 million worth of invoices, right? There's nobody that does that today, right? On a monthly basis. There's no bank today that will actually do that. Banks cannot take risk on micro fleet owners. So we had to solve that problem. And that's why we built a product called Pay Faster. But we restricted it to that. The insurance product is in partnership with Swiss Re and Leadway. They do that. We take small commission. Like, you have to know what are the problems that you must solve. And even the Pay Faster is in partnership with banks. that are now using the data to get comfortable to on-lend through our platform, right, to these people, right? So there has to be discipline and focus. You can't do a lot. Focus on one and solve it. If you're an agro and you say, okay, I'm bringing a route to market, just focus on it. Don't get into procurement of input, because that's part of the thing I see why we're also not having scalable startups in our agro space. I think that the problem is that they are too distracted, right? They're trying to solve for everything. Flutterwave does one thing, right? You don't see Flutterwave doing multiple things, right? So they do one thing. Kobo is doing one thing. You need architects to focus on one thing. If you finance farmers, finance them, go to banks, build a thing that banks can finance, that are financeable from banks. So you're collecting data. Then you solve that. It becomes easy to solve another thing. But this thing, everybody's doing input, this, that, lending. Then nobody can scale. And then we will never have that sector take off.
It's jack of all trade. Thanks a lot, Obi. I think one very important thing I take away from that is focus. Be focused. Very, very critical. Thank you very much. Alima, we have very few minutes left, but there are two questions I just need to hear the answers from you. The first is with respect to you found the nexus between digital innovation and veterinarian services. How that comes together, it takes an innovative mind to even see that. How did you go on that journey? What made you transition? You were a former journalist, and then you now started solving problems in veterinary services as well as using digital innovation. How did you make that transition? Were there parts of your former life that became critical in the role you play today? And then the second question, you're a female agripreneur, and you probably would have also faced a lot of challenges, in getting to where you are, in building the business to where you are today. What are some of those challenges you faced, and how have you been able to work around them?
Thank you very much, and apologies for the late join because it gives me a different time zone here in Ghana. Transitioning from being a journalist to solving the current problem we were solving together with my partner. It isn't entirely a switch of field, because even as a journalist, what I focused on was on rural reporting and trying to understand the key problems that rural people faced in terms of agriculture, education, and health. But then it got to a time I just felt that I needed to pick one of those problems and solve them instead of broadcasting the continuous broadcast of their problems. This community doesn't have support in agriculture or in education, and so what? There is always no response to the problems of these communities. And so it just happens that I have a partner who called me on this project, who is also like-minded, like myself. We happen to have a similar background of growing from families of livestock keepers. And so we have a good understanding of how our parents also struggle for veterinary services to diversify their income in addition to the crops that they grow. And this is a problem that we continue to see in our field of work. He was also working for a company that sold crop insurance. And so he continued to see the struggles of people to keep their crops and also diversify their income by making sure their animals do not die. And so we wanted to make sure that we found a solution to this problem by making the supply chain more efficient for people to be able to access veterinary inputs. And so we thought that the only way to do that is to actually stimulate demand for people to want to use these products, because even vaccines doesn't have a name in our local languages. So we have to educate people the need to have vaccines to keep their animals healthy all year round. We would aggregate their demand and then go to suppliers to buy these products in bulk. We come back to supply to them. But then just recently, we had to scale the model into the upstream to make sure that we are accessing these products from suppliers and selling to retail agrovets who are also supplying to these farmers, but then they continually face this problem of product stock out and influx of lack of good quality of products within the market space. And So getting to the end of this year, our next goal is to be able to deal with manufacturers directly to get these products into the country, to make sure we have continuous access to deliver these products to farmers. As a female entrepreneur, I don't see myself just being a female entrepreneur. I see myself as an entrepreneur just like any other body, regardless of my gender. I haven't faced anything in the communities where people are slow to adoption of our technology or our model because I'm a female. I'm lucky to have a good partner who has a good understanding of what it means to have a partner being a female who understands the rural customers. And so I just see myself as any other entrepreneur. But of course, the challenges of an entrepreneur is faced by myself, regardless of my gender, which has to do with slow adoption of technologies and innovations at the rural areas because of trust. Also because these farmers mostly are not used to these kind of innovations. It becomes a problem for adoptions. They have low incomes and very unstable because they have just 3 months to farm. And immediately after they are farming, they have money after harvesting, but right after that, they do not have money. And so it means that we need to strategically position ourselves to serve these farmers to ensure that we are meeting them at a point that they have money. We need to develop a very simple technology and models that increase the usability and limits the slow adoption. We also needed to be more flexible and offer these farmers some payment plans that are targeted to their harvest periods, because the problems are enormous at the community level. Because if you look at the level of education of the kind of people we are dealing with, there is capital requirement that is needed to deploy technologies in the rural market, which is very high because then there is high operational cost, which is as a result of the need to hire leg team to help these farmers to be able to use the technology. And so the cost of service becomes very high. As a result, the affordability becomes a challenge for farmers. So beyond the trust, we need to do more and ensure that farmers are able to adopt our technologies regardless of where it is coming from.
Thank you very much, Alima. And I mean, I'm glad to hear that, you know, being a female entrepreneur, you know, the world is moving, I think, very, very quickly, and you know, we are embracing things, and I'm glad to hear that that has not been a, you know, a problem or a challenge for you, other than the regular challenges that every other person on this panel, you know, that they are facing. I have one more question to go around, and it's going to be, you know, this kind of quick question for all the panelists, and we also want to give a one sentence or even a one word answer to it. But before I do that, we're going to be having a short Q&A session. So to everyone on the panel, listening to the panel, please send your questions directly to me, so that I'll put them forward to the panelists. So my question, a lot of all the scholars listening in, they are wondering, what is that one problem I can go out and solve from here? And you know, Obi already talked about focus and dedication. So what's that one thing they should go, you know, to focus on to solve? So if I will ask you in the journey you've been going through, and I'll start with you, Alima, what is that one problem that somebody needs to go and find a solution to?
So in rural Africa, there is no one problem.
So that's why we want to just give us one.
I think that there's no doubt our livelihood today depends on technology, and we will continue, our survival tomorrow will continue to be dependent on technology. And so we need to start looking into the rate, quality, and relevance of education in rural Africa, and how it will influence future innovations and technologies. What is the next stage of technology, or what are the possible technologies we should be anticipating in the next 20 to 30 years, where my grandmother's generation will no longer be there? Our level of dependency on technology now perhaps, you know, took Africa by surprise. And so we have to constantly learn to cope and use it. And interestingly, by the time we feel comfortable with particular technologies, then boom, there comes an advanced one. So we need to start looking at the kind of generation that we are growing in rural Africa in terms of the quality and relevance of their education versus the anticipated technologies we should be looking at in the next 20 to 30 years.
Thank you, Alima. So if I take that, your response, it will be, we need to, whatever the problem with rural Africa, helping them to bridge the educational gap that brings them at par, in terms of learning. It might not be the same sophistication as the rest of the world, but helping to bridge that gap. Thank you very much. Obi, what is that problem that you are dying for somebody to help solve? Hi, Obi, are you there? You're mute.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes.
I'm here. So I think the one of the biggest common problem we're seeing in agri-tech is financing for farmers. Financing for farmers.
Sorry, is what idea?
Now, financing for farmers, basically financing farmers, funding them, is what I'm seeing everybody is trying to do. I think that is a very big challenge that requires more attention and sophistication. The ways we are trying to solve it is not going to work, right? I think what they need to do, if an ag tech that strictly focus on financial services for farmers, they shouldn't confuse their business model. They're basically doing financial services for farmers. And what they're going to do is they're going to go use the data that already exists, integrate with different ag tech platforms, and have profile for farmers. And then they go to banks and structure their business in a way that banks can take risk on these farmer pools. It can also be structured as pools, right? So maybe it might not be individuals. And then they have proper credit scoring on each of the pool. But that they have to make that bankable. Like, we are not individuals, how much earnings do people have in this continent to actually be able to fund agriculture themselves? Agriculture is a government project, right? If you're going to do it, you also need to tap into the banks, right? And institutions. And they need somebody that will focus strictly and look at agtech as fintech so that you can be able to make it bankable. Banks can unlock 10 billion, 20 billion if you spend energy for 1 year or 2 years and package that product very well. And I think it will start, that is the first wave that can make agtech to be taken seriously, and people start putting money in it, and then things start coming up, right? So I think that's what somebody literally need to exit all their business model and focus on that financing alone and crack it by making it bankable.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that, Obi. I'm sure people are listening in already, and people are getting out their laptops and they are starting the codings. Femi, what is that problem that we need to solve?
That's a great question. So I think Obi was talking about Food Locker earlier. So the problem is already being solved, Obi, so you can rest assured. But more significantly, I think for us, we believe the most important problem that has to be solved for the ag tech sector is actually specific labor capability. So I'm talking of real labor availability. So for example, we have Jobberman for everybody who wants to go and work in an office, who wants to be a coder, you want to work in a bank, you have Jobberman for that. There is none for the ag tech sector. And this is one of the biggest problems, right? The 250 million smallholder farmers would not go and learn agronomy or go and learn how to operate a combined harvester or how to operate a tractor. We need young people, educated young people who basically want to roll up their sleeves and get involved. And there's a lot of money to be made. I can give you examples. We have, so there's an industry here in your state that produces cassava products, cassava flakes, etc. And they basically went abroad. They went to import mechanization tools. So they brought in tractors, they brought in combined harvesters, etc. But the problem they have now is that they don't have people to operate these things. And these are jobs that could pay you as much as a bank, because the volume and the scope and the scale of what they can solve is humongous. So for us, we think that is one of the biggest problems for the ag sector. We need to find ways of connecting and empowering those people who are at the forefront, who are the smallholder farmers, and connecting them with core technology And young people can step in. You're a graduate, you want to learn how to, and I believe I was told John Deere is doing something on that for women in Nigeria, and as I think across Africa as well, which is to train them and empower them how to operate tractors and some of these heavy mechanization tools, with the objective of then facilitating production at the core, the forefront where the real work is going on. And there's a lot. Irrigation systems. You need people who can operate central pivots. So these are huge, humongous irrigation systems that could very easily irrigate 1 hectare of land within 30 minutes. You need people who can operate these things. You need people who can operate and who can build drip irrigation systems. When I went to Morocco, I saw almost everywhere you got to, you would see one kind of irrigation system or the other. And young people are getting involved. I think this is for me, one of the biggest problems we need to look at.
Awesome. Andela for AgTech.
Exactly.
All right, perfect. No, thank you very much to all our panelists. There are 1 or 2 questions I will put up quickly. The first question says, in solving rural problems, how best would you suggest to have technology step down to residents and to aid early adoption? So I think the idea of that question is where you in rural areas, and I think because of this learning gap as well, how can you step down technology to make it easily adoptable? I don't know which of the panelists would like to take that question.
I could go.
Yeah, Femi, go ahead, please.
It's really funny that at the CTA program, I think it was 2019, Alima actually shared something very, very key towards that, which I took on from 2019 from our speech. And it's the fact that, you have to go and meet people where they are. If all they can do is to listen to a radio station, or they can listen to a pre-recorded message, that's where you have to funnel your message to. If they're illiterate, they're uneducated, they don't have access to smartphones, even if you buy it for them, they cannot use it. There's no internet. The rural communities, for example, recently we took the World Food Program to one of our farms in Osho State, and they were really surprised at how rural it was. Now, if they are that rural, then you have to break it down to their level. You don't necessarily have to force technology to somebody who can never use it. So if you can deploy an IoT and you can make sure a machine can do this work, let the machine do the work. If you need to pair them and find a decent accommodation for a pretty young man and go to a rural area to go and support smallholder farmers, then this is what we have to do. We don't necessarily have to look at America and say, oh, we have to develop this fantastic app because they do the same in the US. If it doesn't work for Africa, then there's no point developing it for Africa. So it might mean we use text messaging, which is one of those things Food Locker uses. You might use voice messages. You might need to deploy extension services agents. So yesterday we were discussing with some extension services agents for our project in northern Nigeria. This is what we have to do as far as we are concerned.
Yeah, thank you very much, Femi. Alima, do you want to chip in?
Yeah, so I think simple models sells and simple model skills. We need to do away with the complexity of technology. Of course, technology itself is already complicated. So as entrepreneurs and innovators, as much as we can, we need to be able to step it down by knowing our customers first and knowing what they need and how they can be able to use our technologies. And of course, we need investment in behavior change to be able to increase the rate of adoption of innovations and improve methods of farming. Due to the proliferation of NGOs in Africa, particularly the northern divide of it, where occupations are usually farming, most rural people have developed this sense of entitlement to freebies. And so it makes it more difficult for them to adopt for-profit social enterprise businesses. And so it's difficult to break through as a for-profit organization. And if you are already in this problem, what you might want to consider doing is to consider finding partners that can subsidize or pay for the services that you render to these rural people in a systemic and strategic way so that they can be able to pay for the full cost of the services in the future. Because they already do not have money, you have a complicated technology, you have high operational costs because of the leg team that need to interface between the farmers and your technology. So what you might want to do is to consider sources of funding through partners that can subsidize the cost in a way that in future the farmers themselves or the rural people themselves will be able to bear the cost by themselves after they have seen the impact of your innovation.
Thank you, Alima. I think the last question we'll be able to take today will be directed towards Obi. And I think, Obi, you already tried to answer this question before, but I think somebody is raising again that the case of farm produce losses like tomatoes and fruits, mangoes, and all the others, there's a huge rate of loss, post-harvest loss or on these products. That what are some of the things that can be done to further help to mitigate this problem?
Yeah, I think what we've mentioned is, in fact, is also a good startup to build. Is a big problem today. It'll work, and I'm happy to support any person that wants to take on that challenge. We need to be able to aggregate all the available cold chain assets, and also gather enough data to allow people to invest in it. An individual can actually invest and buy more of those assets. Then, of course, that's what a startup can do. Then there is the work we're doing with IIFC on the infrastructure, like building cold chain warehouses, right? Those things are not what a startup can do, right? That's the type of World Bank, IFC, government-related work, which is part of the work we're doing. And we hope that will come on stream in the next 18 months, right? But definitely there's opportunity there. I see it more as an opportunity since we're talking to a group of young people here, right? It's something that somebody should go and hack. Somebody should go hack it.
Thank you very much, Obi. All right. I'd like to say a big thanks to all our panelists, Femi, Alima, Obi. Thank you very much. Personally, I think I've taken a lot away from this session, and I'm sure the same for all the scholars that are listening to you all. So thank you very much once again for sitting in on this panel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm glad to be here and meeting all of you.
I will hand over now to Aisha.
Thank you very much. Sincere thanks to our panelists, our moderator, and everyone that has been listening in. As we have heard from Cow Tribe, Food Locker, and Kobo 360, the challenges in the food value chain are abound, and which creates opportunities for the African youth to deploy technology, innovation, and digitization into solving them. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to backtrack a little bit. As we have mentioned earlier, the Sahel Scholars Conference gives opportunities to young people. We would like to actually show a short video that we have prepared from the perspective of these brilliant young minds. We would love for you to have a listen and hear from them.
Hi, my name is Blessing Nathaniel, a student of agriculture at Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, Kaduna State. I participated in the Sahel Scholars Program in the year 2019 as a volunteer and also as a beneficiary. As a beneficiary, I had the privilege of interning at Sahel Office, Lagos State, Nigeria, from November 25th, 2019 to 20th December 2019. It was an amazing experience that I look forward to having again. This is because I gained critical insight into self and community development, which has made me become better and more outstanding in all spheres of life. The experience provided a different perspective and a context of agricultural and academic learning. It also provided an opportunity to put theory into practical. I gathered a lot of employment skills ranging from learning and adapting to the workplace culture, to time management skills, to good communication skills, I mean clear and succinct communication, leadership and personal development skills, leveraging on technology to solve analytical and statistical problems, problem solving and decision making skills, and then most importantly, teamwork. I learned to work with people at different levels of life. I learned that great things in life, especially in businesses, cannot be achieved alone, but by a team. I am glad I participated in the program. Thank you so much, Sahel. Thank you.
My name is Abubakar Ahmed Muhammad. I participated during Sahel Scholars Programs, in which I represented Ahmadu Bello University Zaria for a period of 5 weeks at Sahel office. How does the Scholars Program has impacted in my current activities? First of all, I look at the area where I'm living and make analysis about the most common value chain and marketable agricultural commodities that can be found there, so as to justify the level of employability and the skill I develop. I started thinking about shipping vegetable products, but I later changed up my mind. Why did I do so? Is because of the level of perishability of the product, seasonality, and the way in which there is a sudden change of weather that occur from one part of the country to another. Then I changed up my mind, and later on I started thinking that why can't I go into livestock production, in which I later deliberate my mind and then started focusing on that. I finalized and reached a conclusion that I should go into cattle production, in which I started shipping cattle to Kaduna.
My name is Adeyemi Polowada. I'm from Obafemi Awolowo University, Faculty of Agriculture, Department of Agricultural Economics, and I'm in 400 level. My 1 month internship at Sahel was very amazing. It was fulfilling and interesting for me in the sense that I was able to understand that agriculture has evolved. I got from cutlasses and oats to businesses being discussed in conference room. I get a whole lifelong skills ranging from business etiquette to effective communication skills and business strategies. And it's been a very amazing experience. Thanks to Sahel and to the organizers of the Science Scholar Program. Thank you.
My name is Ezechi Wisdom Ifeanyi Chukwu, the student of Michael Biodiversity Agriculture, Umudike, College of Crop and Soil Sciences, and Department of Agronomy, 400 level. My experience in Sahel has been worthwhile, of which I can never forget. On arrival, I was treated as though I've been part of the family, and that helped me to learn a lot of things because I felt at home. And Sahel has really broadened my knowledge on how I see agriculture. I've really seen agriculture in a prolific perspective, and it has given me access to cutting-edge industry and also giving me the opportunity to interact with persons. I'm so much glad for this opportunity that was given to me to broaden my skills. And I want to say thank you to Sahel for this opportunity. Thank you to my university for granting me this opportunity as well. God bless you.
My name is Salawu Abiodun Emmanuel from Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, from the Faculty of Agriculture and Department of Crop Protection, a 400 level student. My internship experience there has been awesome. I have the designation of agriculture, and the professional working experience there has actually opened my eyes to some things happening in the world of consulting and equity management. And also I have an experience in onboarding section. My knowledge with PowerPoint has now improved, and other computer applications I was able to manage them properly. Sahel Capital and Sahel Consulting has actually helped my life. God bless Sahel Scholar Program. Thank you.
All right, and I, for one, I'm particularly moved by the experiences of these young persons, and Sahel Consulting, Sahel Capital, and Nourishing Africa continues to actually push forward for this sort of community engagement. At this particular point in time, we would like to backtrack a little bit. I know that we have heard from our keynote speaker, Mr. Obiozo, but we haven't actually heard the keynote speech yet. So at this point, we would like to hear from you, Mr. Obi.
Okay, thank you. I think we've discussed most things actually, so it will be very quick. It will be very quick. Can I share my screen instead?
Yes, you can, absolutely.
Oh. Yeah, so thanks everyone for your time. I'm not going to take much of your time. I think in next 5 minutes, I'll be done, and I'll depend on things that people have already said. I don't want to bore you. I'll instead spend more time in taking some of your questions. So agriculture, in my view, is massive opportunity in our continent, especially in Nigeria. Today is contributing almost 1/6 of our GDP in the continent. It's also creating a lot of jobs. Most jobs are created in agriculture. Now, there are some issues we have in it. It does not create those type of jobs that are high paying, which we've discussed about some of the challenges that contribute to that, the farm wastages, the different inefficiencies, the lack of scale to actually make it attractive for people. Quickly on the background of Kobo, you might already know we're in 7 African countries. We started in 2018. We have over 40,000 trucks on the platform. We've moved about $8 billion worth of goods on our platform, and we are lucky to be backed by interesting investors from IFC, TLCom, and Goldman Sachs. What we've done in our platform is something that I believe that is important for this group in terms of when you're thinking of how do I start something, how do I solve problem. We noticed that before Kobo, there was just no way people had visibility and transparency within the supply chain. And we built a platform that brought truck owners, cargo owners of all kinds, financiers, insurance businesses, OEMs. We brought all of them together. And it wasn't done in one day, as mentioned to you. In the first part, we focused on just combining truck owners and the FMCGs. And gradually, we built a platform that today supports almost 2,000 trailer loads every single day. This slide is where I would like to spend a lot of our time. There are a lot of challenges, as all of us can see today in supply in agriculture. We've mentioned that in the panel we had before. The ones that I would like to focus on is on the funding and also the wastage. And within that funding, as mentioned, a big problem we're seeing is that agriculture has not been, for most people, it has not actually yielded that type of value that will make young people leave some of the fancy jobs, in quote, to focus on it. So what we need to think about is how do we make agriculture a real sector, like a competing opportunity for a young graduate? Why should a young graduate actually go into agriculture, right? And I think one of the key things, as mentioned, that we need to be able to do is we need to be able to gather a lot of data in agriculture and make it bankable, right? And make it investable. So it's not just impact investors. It's not just people who care about other things. How do we make it economically viable? And on that journey, I see different opportunities. I see the logistics opportunities. I see the fintech opportunity in that space. I see the aggregation opportunity. There's a lot of opportunities that can come out of that space to actually make it financially viable for people to fund. And once it becomes viable for people to fund, you also now start building platforms that reduce that wastage, and then it becomes economically viable to convince more people to go into agriculture. And that journey is not going to be easy, right? It's not something that we should wait on government, right? Governments create policies that enable things. And I think they've been very transparent and they're actually proactive in terms of creating policies that should spur innovation within agtech space. And there is now part of about 167 of us on this call to see how are we going to come together as small groups and start building things that we can actually use digitalization to solve. How do we do that? And of course, it's not going to be easy. There is, of course, challenges of proof of concept. You're not always going to have that necessary funding in the beginning to prove that concept, which means that you have to do a lot of the heavy lifting on your own, right? The person that is moving cotton to Zaria, right? That business can be funded, right? But of course, you have to have gathered some data and done it for 6 months and is working before people will come in and support you, which is part of the challenge you probably have faced. Is you're talking about funding. I am not able to get people to invest in businesses. Before people invested in our business, we had to do all the heavy lifting to get the proof of concept. Of course, there is issue that, of course, the land acquisition challenges, that is where advocacy comes in, right? It's the work that is also very, very critical. It's not for startups to do, it's for policymakers. But based on the progress we're making on digitalization and the startup ecosystem, it will now make government to see this sector as a mainstream, and then they start looking for ways. And we already by that time have data on what they can expect if they make some of these policy changes. Funding, as mentioned, is a huge problem. And I think one of it is that we don't have enough data today to be able to actually give people a good sense of the potential economic viability of agtech in Nigeria, right? And Africa, if you generalize it. And what needs to happen there is, first, we've done from crowdfunding, from the type of crowdfunding. It worked a degree, but of course, there's also risk that are inherent in those type of funding. But we need to be able to move towards banks, right? So that they can, of course, support in building that infrastructure and that level of funding that is needed. And startups can enable that journey by aggregating that data. We've seen the Foot Locker and other people trying to do that, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And all these things can also be done regionally as well. Nigeria is huge and massive that it just becomes almost difficult for one company early on to actually solve all the problem. You can actually do it in different sectors, in different regions. So there's still opportunity there as well. And then, of course, there is, of course, the impact side of all the work that is being done. So the work in agtech is not just an economic work, but also is a lot on climate change, on impact, and different things, because these things are affecting lives, right? And how are those things also causing erosion and different challenges that we are having within that ecosystem? But for the sake of our conversation, is not a key focus for me at this time, because these are not things that young people can actually solve. It's government policies. So we're going to focus on what is those things that we can actually do as a group of young people to start solving that problem. And hopefully that brings enough attention of government and private sector to jump in and enable us to be able to scale within that space. So we've talked about wastages. Of course, part of that is what we are solving with the World Bank now on trying to bring cold chain. A lot of the things you see on these images are fruits, and those things are getting wasted. And think of those that have spent 1 year, 6 months of their time actually cultivating this. How do you actually expect them to continue to see agriculture as a viable career if all those things are lost in due to lack of cold chain? So those are some of the challenges we're solving, and happy to also co-innovate with any person here who also have a good idea on how we can work on this. And then, of course, education. I know that a few of the people who are on panel have mentioned that education. It is very, very critical. It is very, very critical. And it's just something that needs to happen. It will take time, but building and localizing solution is the key way to this, right? How do we not transplant solution that is coming from India and China? How do we look at those solutions, but actually spend time in our local communities to actually localize them? A good example is that when I started Kobo, I actually lived in Kano for 1 year. I actually spent 2018 in Kano for 1 year, and that is where we built our first driver app. And why did I move from Lagos to Kano? I really wanted to understand how this solution should work. So I didn't build an Uber for trucks because it won't work here, right? Some drivers don't speak English, they can't read. So how are they going to be able to use some of these solutions? So we also have to, when we're thinking of that education, it has to be local. Education doesn't actually have to mean English. There is always this misconception about education meaning English. No, it's people being able to, in their own way, interact with something that actually supports their business and aids their life. So that's how you should also be thinking of this innovation. It doesn't have to be people using app. It can be USSD. It can be different. It can be a call center, actually. Running a call center that is efficient can actually solve some of the problem we're having in agriculture. There are certain ways you can solve this problem that is not just focused on trying to mimic what already exists in different parts of the world. So as promised, it's just about 5 minutes because I know we have to end soon. I'm happy to kind of take your question if you have any question that you haven't asked before.
Okay, a huge thank you
Aisha,
to
yeah.
Mr. Obi. Yes, I'm right here. Huge thank you, and for your excellent remarks and for your commitment towards supporting African entrepreneurs. We are most grateful, and it is indeed a testament that there's so much to be done, and we as individuals, our organizations, our networks can do so much to support entrepreneurs, support young people in nourishing the African continent. As we have heard, access to funding, access to information, tackling climate change and addressing food wastages are some of the key pain points that youth need to focus on in order to move ahead with transforming Africa's agricultural landscape. Thank you very much, Mr. Obi. And at this point, we would like to introduce a very important resource to our participants, Food Entrepreneurs in Africa, Scaling Resilient Agriculture Businesses. Right up on the screen, this was a book that was authored by our co-founder, Ndidi Oguneli, and was launched earlier this year, actually. It is an absolute must-have for all agripreneurs and inspiring entrepreneurs because it is filled with nuggets of wisdom on how to navigate the agribusiness landscape, especially for SMEs. So please do check it out. And then there is a link there. We would also put that in the chat box where you can actually go and purchase this resource. Okay, so now we are going to jump right into the next panel of the day, and I would hand over to Ramat Yufujo, who is the co-CEO, co-founder of Nourishing Africa, to moderate this panel, tapping into the $1 trillion industry, empowering the African youth to build resilient and sustainable agribusinesses. Over to you, Ramat.
Thank you so much, Aisha. And I would like to say that it is really a delightful pleasure to be able to moderate this session. And I am really excited to discuss the topic for today. So the topic is tapping into the $1 trillion industry, empowering the African youth to build resilient and sustainable agribusinesses. And I'll start this panel by quoting the president of the African Development Bank, Akinwumi Adesina. He said, "The size of food and agriculture in Africa will rise to $1 trillion by 2030. Yes, you heard that right, $1 trillion. The population of Africa, now at 1.2 billion, will double to 2.5 billion by 2050. These 2.5 billion people must eat, and only through food and agribusiness can this be achieved." End quote. So I would say that this is a huge, huge opportunity for the African youth. To discuss this, we have invited 4 distinguished panelists who are entrepreneurs and experts in the industry, having spent years building profitable and sustainable agribusinesses on the continent. I'll go ahead to read the short bios of our panelists just to give you an idea just how much of experts they are in discussing this topic. And I'll start with Peter Njojo, our co-founder and group CEO at Twiga Foods. Our co-founder and group CEO of Twiga, which is a B2B e-commerce industry that focuses on food and grocery in the informal retail. Twiga currently employs 1,000 people and serves 30,000 customers every month. Prior to taking up his role, Peter spent 21 years with Coca-Cola on his last role, being president of the West and Central Africa Business Unit. Peter was also the president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Kenya, a director of the American Business Council in Nigeria, and has been voted among the top 100 young leaders in Africa by Forbes Africa and top 40 under 40 by the Business Daily in Kenya. Peter holds a Master of Business Administration in Strategic Management, a Bachelor of Science degree in International Business Administration from the U.S. International University in Kenya, and an Executive Leadership Program from the Harvard Business School. Peter, are you with us? Just to say hi before I move on to the person.
Hi, Ramat. It's a pleasure being here and looking forward to an enlightening conversation.
Awesome. Looking forward to the same. All right, I would move ahead to introduce the next panelist. You can move the slide, please. So I will now introduce Olanrewaju Wilton-Waddell, who is a business thought leader with vast experience in multiple industries across finance, oil and gas, agribusiness, and FMCG. His background is in asset management at Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria and banking at Guarantee Trust Bank. He holds an MBA from the IE Business School. Lanre, are you there?
Hi, Ramat. Yes, I'm here. It's a pleasure
Awesome.
to be here, and I'm looking forward to
so much.
engaging.
All right. So I'll move on to Josephine, who is South African born, Congolese by origin, founder of Biakudia Urban Farming Solutions, an urban agricultural startup, which aims to reconcile city dwellers to their food and environment through urban agriculture. Josephine is passionate about raising awareness and moreover implementing viable solutions on issues surrounding health, sustainability, and access to healthy and affordable food in cities. Her passion is in transformation in the food ecosystem, further manifested in her work at the Wakanda Food Accelerator, where she works full-time as the operations coordinator. Her mission is to be part of the movement of young Africans working towards having a prosperous food ecosystem for all those who live on the continent. She holds a bachelor's degree in accounting and economics from the University of Johannesburg. Josephine, hi. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Ramat. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So last but definitely not the least, I would introduce Peter Ngui, who is the founder of Early Bird Venture Lab and former president at Brick, an African tech startup that builds rugged connectivity hardware. Early Bird is a Nairobi-based venture lab that focuses on providing funding interventions and growth strategy to African companies. Peter is passionate about business strategies and investment in emerging markets. He's the founder of the Global South think tank, GLOSITT, and believes that Africans are best positioned to chart their own path to solving many business challenges by leveraging their geniuses and localized solutions. Working with some of Africa's fastest growing startups like Market Force and Africa's Pocket, Peter loves to travel, is an adrenaline junkie and a blogger about both his hobbies. Welcome, Peter. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So as you would notice, we have two Peters on this panel. So I would just, say Peter of Trigger Foods and Peter of Early Bird, just so we can distinguish between both of you. So again, I'd say thank you so much to all four panelists for joining this discussion today. And we will just dive right into the topic of the discussion. Just to remind us all, the topic is tapping into the $1 trillion industry, empowering the African youth to build resilient and sustainable businesses. So I'll start with Peter of Trigger Foods. So I want to talk about this in particular. How is Trigger Foods helping to transform the food landscape in East Africa? So I'll have us get started on that first.
Thank you so much, Ramat. So just to give some context, across the continent, consumers are spending about 50 to 60% of their disposable income on food. Now, just for comparison purposes, this is equivalent to how much consumers were spending in the US in the 1870s. That's about 150 years ago. And when you look at the numbers today, countries like the US now are spending 6.2%. Most of the EU are below 10%. And there's a factor of rising incomes in those countries, but also there's a factor of absolute cost of food. Now, when you look at the continent, at the core of inefficiency in the production of food is what I call a fragmented retail. I think sometimes we look at the farming ecosystem and don't look at the market side in terms of where the problem actually lies. Because of a fragmented retail, it is very, very difficult for you to actually have a commercial investment in food production dovetailing into that type of ecosystem. For comparison purposes, South Africa, 60% of retail is formal. So you have big supermarkets that account for about 60% of food retail, or let's say retail in total. As a result of that, you've had very efficient farming ecosystems developed to support that retail ecosystem. And today, South Africans spend about 16 to 20% of their disposable income on food, which is about half the rest of the continent. So the key thing is that we need to find ways in which we can leverage technology to aggregate the demand of informal retail, because that's not about to change. And I'll explain why a little bit later. If you look at markets like Nigeria, 98% informal. You look at Kenya, 80% informal. So the small roadside stalls that are selling food are not about to go away. So we need to find ways in which we can leverage technology, aggregate this demand, and start building efficient supply chains that feed into that type of retail ecosystem. Without that, agriculture will then still remain a very, very, what I'd call poorly structured industry, where we're talking about an opportunity of $1 trillion, but we cannot access it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing those statistics. And I am a firm believer in statistics helping to inform business decisions. And like you've said, we really need to actually leverage technology to aggregate demand and build efficient supply chains. And based on the work that you have shared and the work that you do at Sweeter Foods, what emerging threats are you beginning to see in the African food industry, and how specifically can aspiring young entrepreneurs create opportunities out of these trends?
So the thing is that when we look at food, I see three big emerging trends on the continent. The first is a trend around what I call household disposable income. And if you look at household disposable income on a per capita basis, what's happening on the continent is that if you look at it in terms of nominal terms, the trend is somewhat flattish to very, very low single-digit growth, maybe over the next 5 to 10 years. But when you adjust it for inflation, it's actually negative, which means that a household that is spending maybe 1,000 naira to buy a certain amount of goods today in Lagos will not be able to buy the same amount of goods with 1,000 naira in a year's time. And I think we're all living through that reality where the price of everything is going up. So one of the things that we're seeing is that households will actually be stressed for affordability. And what we will see in that type of scenario is that brands, especially in the food space, might become less relevant as people become more price sensitive. And there will be a bigger opportunity for us to be more efficient in terms of how we farm and how we pass on some of those benefits to consumers so that they're able to meet their daily requirements. So, and I think that's a big, big macro trend that we're seeing coming through, and especially with COVID that has disrupted household incomes. This is bound to accelerate in the next couple of years because, yes, now we're dealing with a disease. In the next couple of years, we'll be dealing with the consequences of a pandemic. The second thing that we're seeing coming through is that Africa is urbanizing at close to 2x the rate of population growth, which means that the number of people moving to urban areas is significantly more than the general population growth. Now, countries like West Africa are very, very urbanized, about 50% urbanized, and that's still continuing to grow. But when you move to the east coast of the continent, about 25 to 30% urbanized and continuing to grow. Now, when you have this rate of urbanization, what we're seeing is that government infrastructure is not keeping up with the rate of population growth in the cities. And what is bound to happen is that we will see an increase in informal settlements, and we will also see an increase in informal retail. So as I mentioned, informal retail is not about to go away. If you look at, for example, Nigeria, ShopRite just closed its doors. So which means that right now you actually don't have a major supermarket chain in a market like Nigeria, which is the largest economy on the continent. So when you start looking at it from that perspective, this is a mega trend that is bound to continue in sub-Saharan Africa. The third thing that I find very, very interesting on the continent is that telcos are actually facing a significant amount of competition from applications like WhatsApp. So we're seeing an erosion in voice revenues and SMS revenues. So most of the telcos are actually upgrading their infrastructure to ensure that they're able to offer data services. But the consequence of this is that a significant number of people will be pushed from feature phones to smartphones in about a 12 to 18-month period. And what you will have is a significant increase in mobile internet penetration across the continent happening at the same time. So what this tells me is that there's an opportunity in production of food and producing it efficiently. There's an opportunity to focus in the urban areas because that's where the issue is bound to be most dire. And the third thing is that there's an opportunity to ensure that you're able to leverage technology in delivering this proposition because internet penetration is about to explode across the continent.
That is simply amazing. And again, even standing from here, you've really blown my mind away with these three opportunities. And just to recap what you said, you've mentioned the opportunity linked closely with the trend around the disposable income and how youth can actually, leverage on this price sensitivities, also on the movement of people to the urban areas. And I actually just wanted to mention that now I believe this is one of the solutions that Josephine in particular is trying to profile forward in terms of the Biakudia company that is creating urban farms. I'll come to Josephine very soon so that she can tell us more about this. And you've mentioned the whole trend around the mobile phones and the telco infrastructure. And thank you so much for mentioning all of that. And one thing I have seen when you're sharing all of these ideas is that, creating these big, bold ideas is really one thing. And then running with the ideas over the long term is another. So given your experience starting Twiga and working with and mentoring young people, what would you say are most critical for African youths to actually build and implement sustainable businesses? I want you to link this with the perspective of fundraising as well, because I can imagine many young people on this call are saying, oh, I now have this idea. Peter of Twiga is talking about this and this, but I don't have money to start the business. And, so I want you to help us link all of those together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ramat. I strongly believe that every journey starts with a single step. So one of the things that I normally find is that, especially when you're starting a business, is have a clear understanding of a problem that you're trying to solve. Because agri is a very, very wide space. And I was kind of just listening to Obi share a little bit about the agri opportunity, talking about logistics to aggregation. So when you're talking about agri, it's a very, very wide area. So the key thing is that, pick an area that is an area that you have a good understanding of and essentially is really, really scoped out. Because when you start a business, and especially if you have a very, very wide scope, chances are that you get overwhelmed and then there's so many things coming at you from all directions. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that once you identify the small area, then have a bold vision. How do you want to transform that area? Because if you take a small area and think very boldly over a wide geography, then the numbers start to stack up. Because most investors, what they're looking for is total addressable market. How big is this opportunity that you're talking about? The third thing I would say is that, and I think this is a piece that is really, really overlooked, build a good team. Now, at times, people are like, how do I build a good team if I don't even have the money to start with? And that's why you find that many startups have co-founders. And the whole idea around having a co-founder is actually going and finding somebody who's like-minded, who complements a skill that you do not have. Because at the end of the day, yes, you're the sponsor for the vision, but at the end of the day, you need people who are able to execute that vision. So in the case of Twiga, I had to get a co-founder and also have a management team that I also consider my fellow co-founders. And the whole idea is that I had to then bring on board people who would then take on equity. And this is very, very important. Who would then take on equity as part of their compensation. Because in the early days, you cannot afford competitive salaries vis-a-vis the market. You have to find other ways in which you're able to attract talent and inspire that talent to execute against the vision that you set out to achieve. Then the fourth thing that I would then say is that you need to start small and have small wins. As Obi mentioned, he lived in Kano, and I know Obi very well. He lived in Kano for a whole year as he was setting out Kobo 360. The key thing is that you need to find a way to start very, very small, have small wins, and document these small wins, which actually prove that your business model is working. Then the last thing that is very, very important, I think this is a piece that many people don't connect. Tell your story. Find a way to tell your story in a way that is compelling, because it is all about storytelling. When somebody is sitting in San Francisco, when somebody is sitting in New York, somebody is sitting in London, they've not been to Kano, they've not been to Ibadan, they've not been to Nairobi, they've not been to any of these places. So the key thing is that the only way you can capture the imagination is how well you're able to tell the story, articulating the opportunity, the total addressable market, the team that you've built to execute against the vision, the small wins that you have, and essentially what it is that you need to be successful. And when you're able to put all this together, what you find is that there will be people who will be willing to listen to you. So what I say is that, don't give up. And of course, when it comes to fundraising, leverage networks that exist. The key thing is that, we essentially have pioneered a lot of this startup space. We're willing to provide mentorship or even point you in the right direction when it comes to fundraising, the type of investment that you're seeking. And by leveraging this ecosystem, GB over Flutterwave does it very well, Kobo, Obi does it very well. We're trying to do the same thing here in East Africa. And once we create this ecosystem of founders, the whole idea is how do we then ensure that we're also creating a vibrant ecosystem that actually is able to fund startups. But the most important thing is that do your homework. Because at the end of the day, if you don't do your homework and your idea is not well cooked, then that essentially also compromises your ability to succeed.
Thank you so much, Peter. Those are really amazing. And I would just dwell on three things that you've said in terms of one, bringing in the human capacity that would help, with the expertise as well as the fundraising, starting small, really critical. Thank you for sharing that. And also to tell the story, tell your story as you go along your journey. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to go to Josephine now. I'll come back to you, Peter, for one quick final question, but really quickly moving on to Josephine. So, and before I take your question, Josephine, I would like to inform our participants that, of course, you can ask your questions by typing in the chat. You can send them directly to me, Rahmat Eyifunjowo, so that we can pick it up and go away with it fast. So Josephine, now to you. You are an example of a young, passionate, and thriving woman in African agriculture, and we definitely love to see that. But why agriculture? What problems are you trying to solve through your company, BUFS, and what is your biggest motivation that keeps you on track?
Thank you, Ramat. Again, greetings to everybody. I think that's a very good question. It's something that I've asked myself quite a few times because I never saw myself going into agriculture or into the food space or the food industry. But I'd say that agriculture found me, as probably many of us in this call. I'd say that through a series of various events, I was led to agriculture. I think if I had to start telling all the dots that connect, it would take the whole day. But as you said in my introduction in the bio, I am originally from the DRC. And in 2000 and a few years back, I had gone to visit the DRC. And someone had taken me to a farm. And, I think from there, that was probably the catalyst as to, how much resources we have in Africa. And, I started doing my research and I started reading. And I say my respect for agriculture grew through that experience. When they're telling me that Africa could feed the world, Congo itself can feed the world. And for me, I came to realize that agriculture is the backbone of who we are. I started to see connections with agriculture with everywhere from our health, a health situation that my father's currently going through and went through. I see how food impacts the health. I see how it impacts our economies. I see how it's the environment. I mean, everything links back to food. And I think once you've realized all these things, there's no going back. So I think that bug bit me. And I told myself, when you start seeing the impact as a young person that you can have, you say, if not me, who? And if not now, when? I mean, we can sit and complain about the many problems that we have, but it's up to us to come up with solutions. I like what the previous speaker said, that you focus on one solution and you do a good job at it. There's many, many problems. And I think for me, the one solution that I wanted to focus on, being that I live in the city, so I was born and raised in Johannesburg, was to kind of solve the disconnect that urban dwellers have with their food and environment. Like Peter said, in South Africa, 70% of our retail is formal retail. So in Johannesburg in particular, we have this perception that food just comes from the store. A lot of people don't know that there's a whole process that goes through growing food, and there's farmers out there, and there's nature involved, and the kind of food that we're eating. So there's that total disconnect, especially with the urban poor, where it's, it's just eat, and they have to get food in their stomachs, and, they're not looking at the health, they're not looking at the environment. And for me, that was a major problem that I found in the city. And being that urban populations are growing even more, I asked myself, what solution can we look into to reconnecting these city dwellers to their food and environment? And that's when I started Byakudia Urban Farming Solutions. So our mission is, of course, to reconnect city dwellers to their food and environment through urban agriculture, through the various services that we provide, where people realize that agriculture is a whole process, and growing your own food is a process, and it's something that you can do, and you can bring it closer to the city and closer to your homes. And also the fact that you can also have a say in your health. I think we've been talking so much about agriculture, and one thing we don't look at, I think one thing particularly in South Africa that's a problem, is health. Yes, we have all this food and we're growing all this food, but we look at like the COVID situation, where a lot of people's health was compromised in COVID because of their eating habits. We can talk about a vaccine and we can talk about medicine, but the real medicine is in our food. And how do we get people to realize that, especially those who are living in the city? And you asked my biggest motivation. I think it's something that I mentioned before, is probably the fact that the continent needs young people like myself and everybody else in this chat, in the entire food value chain, to drive positive impact and growth. Again, I go back to that quote that says, if not me, who? And if not now, when? That's my motivation, like to keep me going and saying that we want to look back 50 years from now, 40 years from now, and say that, we worked hard and we tried our best to drive the agriculture industry in Africa. I mean, if it's not us who push this $1 trillion economy, someone else will come from outside and leverage this. So I think as an African youth, that's my motivation.
Thank you so much, Josephine. And one thing that struck at me from what you've said is that if not you, who would? And if not now, when? And I believe this is one thing that other youths out there can actually key into. You're focused on the problems and you have channeled your energies into creating solutions. Mm-hmm. And then I also ask, so what are the key lessons from your journey so far? And especially coming from the perspective of being a female in the sector?
I think I could go back to the previous female who spoke in the other panel. For me, it's not really something that I've really kept stuck in my mind. I mean, yes, I know as females we have various challenges, but I think as an entrepreneur, we all face similar challenges. But a key lesson for me that I've learned that I can impart to others is make sure the solution that you're providing is actually the solution. I think we try to provide solutions to a problem thinking that that's the solution, and maybe there's another problem behind the solution that needs to be solved before you solve your solution. So I think really do your research and make sure that what the solution you're bringing forth is something that's actually needed, and it's something that people or the communities you're trying to serve or the groups you're trying to serve actually need that solution. Like the gentleman spoke earlier, you can't bring tech to someone who doesn't even know how to read. So that's a big lesson for me, is making sure that I understand the solution and I understand it from the point of the problem, from the person who has a problem, and then bring your solution. And then another key lesson for me is perseverance. I think that it's easy to start something, but to keep going when the chips are down and when things are tough and there's no business and there's so much things against you. And I think as an African entrepreneur, like that's almost every day. I think perseverance is important. It's very, very important. If you know that you're solving the right solution and you know that it's needed, just persevere and eventually things do get better.
Thank you so much, Josephine. In the interest of time, I would quickly move on to Lanre of Dilo Foods, and I would circle back for one final question. So Lanre, I understand that you do not have a background in agriculture, but here you are, you've launched Dilo Foods. And so I want to ask a couple of questions. I'll just shoot them out at you for our young people out there who also, do not have this kind of background and are looking to venture into agribusiness and tap into this $1 trillion industry. So, what inspired you to venture into agribusiness as an entrepreneur? And the second question would really be, what were your expectations at the beginning and what are the experiences so far? And did the two actually match up? And another one I would want you to address while you're at it is, what are the plans for Dilo Foods and how is your company working towards achieving these plans in the short to mid-term?
All right, thank you very much, Ramat. Very interesting question you asked. I get that question a lot because my background was more in finance and asset management, like you mentioned earlier. But I will say one word, literally how I got into agribusiness is sustainability, right? At the beginning of this panel discussion, you also spoke about, you quoted the words of Professor Adeshino about how in Africa, the population is going to double by 2050, and these people have to eat, right? And for me, that was the beginning of my sojourn into agribusiness, just looking for solutions and trying to feed people because all these people have to eat. Now, having said that, I would use this opportunity to also implore and encourage anyone who is interested in the agribusiness. It can be daunting, it can be tough, but I would say now is time to start. Now is time to start. People have to eat. So please, there's enough space for everyone. If you can come in with innovative products, whatever space you want to, like Peter said, there's so many parts of this whole industry. So you just have to find which one works for you and what problem you're trying to solve and work with your solution. Question about how the journey has been so far and did the experiences meet up with the expectations? Well, I would say initially, definitely not. When we started off, I would say it's been a roller coaster of emotions, right? When we started off, the first thing that really hit us was getting the approved government regulation to start. Like in Nigeria, we call it the NAFDAC certificate. And you can imagine having everything up and running. You have your equipment, you've made you've secured investments, you have your human capital, everything was ready to go. And it took us another about, I think, 13 months to get our approval to start. That also, at first was quite a daunting and very discouraging thing. And I would implore anyone and I would also say that anyone who is interested in going into this should, especially the processing side, because we're in the processing side, to be able to be ready for such uphill tasks. as to the NAFDAC, getting your NAFDAC certification. So the next thing also, right, that we found out when we started was the issue of like everyone has spoken, especially Peter spoke about, the lack of a better word to use, I would say the fact that the whole value chain of the ecosystem in agribusiness, especially in Nigeria, is very crude and very informal. When we started, we found that out. Like Peter had said before, the market is 98% informal. That's when it comes to the distribution channels. Even sourcing your raw materials is very informal and very fragmented. And you have the operations of people like the middlemen who also affect the whole prices and everything. So I would say that those really were the biggest shocks that we had when we started. About our plans for delos, we're looking at diversifying our product line and introduction of more innovative products. But we're also open to more ideas from anyone who, if you have more ideas for us. Some of the best ideas we've been able to implement was talking to brilliant minds, like a lot of people who are here. So, yeah.
All right, Larry, thank you so much for sharing that. I have one question on, the ecosystem in which you work. Many young people, want to understand, when I venture into agribusiness, what are the factors that would affect my business, the political economy, and all of those factors. I'll leave that thought with you while I quickly move on to Peter of Earlybird, and I'll circle back to you for that final question. So Peter, I would like to actually jump right into your experience running a venture lab, incubating startups in Nigeria. So let's talk about some exciting new business ideas that you have seen. What example of innovative business models are out there for young people to benchmark for their own businesses?
Thank you very much, Rapmat, for having me. I think the first thing I want to start is actually thinking through this 1 trillion number that you've introduced to us. I think personally, this is an opportunity for Africa based on so far, we've usually lost the battle on who actually controls how we eat, and especially from an agricultural point of view. Let's take some crops, for example, to look at. Kenya is the #1 producer of tea globally. And Kenya gets only $2 billion from the tea, while the global market for that is in the tens of billions. If we look at rubber, for example, it's a $200 billion market, which only maybe $3 billion goes to Africa. Josephine has said something that I believe, like Congo alone, DRC can feed the whole entire continent. So I think what I am liking to see, what I am enjoying seeing, is the innovation that comes from the people who are sitting in this room today. Whether you're talking about Obi, Landry, Josephine, Peter, the way to feed Africa and the way to actually move the money from going to the global West back to Africa is through technology. And I think the people who you've been talking today can be good benchmarks for how to do it. Now, how to move how I would look at it is who's the best benchmark person in every segment. When you look at logistics, you say, okay, I'm going to look at Kobo. When you look at distribution, I'm going to look at Twiga. When you look at value addition, I'm going to look towards Lanre. So I think Africans have what it needs to completely benchmark from their own. The last thing I'm going to say on benchmarking, as Peter said, you have big supermarket or big supply chain companies that are closing down. We saw that in Nigeria. Nakumatt did the same thing in Kenya. The genius on how to feed Africa and how to move food, how to value add, is probably going to stand in the hands of the youth who are in this meeting today. I think that's how I would look at it.
Thank you so much, Peter, for saying that we have to look inwards to benchmark, our own industry, and I love that that you mentioned that. So another thing I wanted to ask is, if you look at the successful startups that you have worked with, and you've also, sort of brought everybody else who are on this panel into the mix. So if you look at all of these successful startups that you've worked with versus the not so successful ones, what would you say are the differentiating factors?
Thank you for that question. That's a really good question. I'll go back to, to the people who've been speaking. I think they've already said a few things here. So the first thing is, Wangari Maathai, who was the Nobel laureate from Kenya, always used to say, if you want to move faster, go alone. If you want to move further, go together, right? So that the first thing I would want to see is, of the 200 people here, everyone should ask themselves, who is going on this journey with me, right? And we have to do the journey together as an African continent. The first thing I would do is figure out who are our mentors. The good thing is, from the last 20 years, we've had really, really exciting people who've gone ahead of us, right? For the younger companies, they wouldn't be raising as much money right now, as we're seeing, because the continent keeps doubling how much money we raise almost by the year. That will not happen if we do not have the Kobos, the Twiggers, the Flutterwaves, the Paystacks to lead us to where we need to go, right? So first of all, we need to pay respect to people who've gone there ahead of us and use them as benchmark and mentors for our companies. The second thing I would say is, make sure as you're going on the journey, find somebody to go with you. Very few, so I am a farmer's kid. My mom was a chicken farmer and she was a big farmer, right? And my dad was a dairy farmer. But their companies were never intended to be global companies or even continental companies because they did it by themselves. If they found co-founders and other people to join the journey with them, they probably would have done 1,000 times more than they were able to do. So every young person, including myself, should ask, who is going on this journey with me from day one, and keep building that ecosystem to deliver results. The second thing is traction. And I think what Josephine was saying is really important. Make sure that whatever it is you're tackling, you're able to look at it from a point of, can I provide value to the customers, and can I provide value to the continent? Do I have information and the genius to start tackling this problem, right? If you look at all the companies, all the people who've pitched here, they've been able to figure out what's the little part of this that I can solve. Now, Peter was saying, just start with small steps. I really believe in that. But on the flip side, we really need to be able to start building global companies, right? The problem is big enough. The money is there, right? So I'm a recovering capitalist. I always look at the size of the problem, and it's $1 trillion problem. If we don't do it right, or if we don't do it fast enough, if we don't solve it ourselves, I promise you that there are going to be people all over the world who are willing to come and take that, which they've done, again, with rubber, with cocoa, with tea. So we need to start being leaders, thought leaders, and forerunners in how we solve our problems. So those are two things. Simply, your team needs to be really strong, and your traction needs to look a certain way to be able to solve these problems.
Thank you so much for mentioning all of those. And, I would come back to you for some, particular solutions when it comes to the financing aspect, especially given your work. But I want to go back to Peter. In fact, I want to go back to all of the speakers just for one more question. And I would like to say that we will take some to answer direct questions from participants. So please send your questions to me so that we can address them. And so going back to Peter of Twigger Foods, my question, under 1 minute really, I would like us to take this super fast, is that, you went from a corporate job to build Twigger Foods. And first I wanted to ask, for the sake of our young people out there, has it been worth it? And On the heels of that, I want to know what are the highs and lows from your experience that our young aspiring entrepreneurs can draw from your journey to shape their own journey. If you can take that under 1 minute, that would be fantastic.
Thank you so much, Ramat. I would say that my journey has been worth it. When I started Trigger, I had to sell my matrimonial home. My wife and I had to sell our matrimonial home to actually finance a business. So sometimes we see success in many years later and not understanding that the journey and in the initial days is normally very, very difficult when no one believes your story. So my high was actually securing Goldman Sachs funding. And this was at the time where we managed to have our first major fundraise with a big name out there. The other thing is that figuring out how to become relevant or to remain relevant during the COVID season. I think this was a very, very trying time for businesses. And I think for us, having figured that out, I think for us was a high. In terms of lows, the COVID pandemic claimed some promising farmers who were not able to weather the storm. For us was a low because as a result of that, these farmers that we had backed that were not successful, and that cost a bit in different ways. And the last thing I would say in terms of a low is unlearning what I thought would work in a startup, having spent 21 years in Coca-Cola, and where you're trying things and things just simply don't work because you need a different set of tools and solutions to solve those types of problems to ensure that you remain relevant to your customers. So I would say that in summary would be my highs and lows.
Thank you so much, Peter, for sharing that journey with us. I mean, it couldn't have been easy. You know, my eyes popped when you said you had to sell your home to build a company. And I hope that's really a lesson for all of us out there, really. Thank you so much. I'll move quickly to Josephine now. And, you know, Josephine, when it comes to the available structures of support, the resources out there that you have possibly leveraged to build yourself, to build your capacity and your business, what would you recommend for young entrepreneurs out there across Africa to explore, to build their own capacity and build their agribusinesses?
I think for me, in a minute, I'd say find your tribe. So by tribe, I mean many like community type organizations, like Nourishing Africa, I think is a good example of like-minded people, mission-driven, with the same goal and the same mission, who provide opportunities and a network and a community out there. I think that's very important. As many of the speakers spoke about, having a team and having a co-founder and having a community of people you work with is very important. I think you can find it's technology has made it so easy for us. So again, like I give the example of Nourishing Africa. I mean, it's a platform that could be leveraged. I mean, you guys have done a wonderful job finding entrepreneurs across the continent, finding resources on funding. Even sometimes I go there and I see the courses that you provide. I think there are many opportunities out there. It's just up to us to look. And when you do find it, make sure that you leverage it to your full advantage, because there are many people out there who are willing to help and who are willing to partner. So yeah, that's my minute.
Awesome, Josephine. Thank you so much for mentioning Nourishing Africa. So I would implore, like you've said, I would implore everybody to really explore the website, www.nourishingafrica.com, for a host of lots of resources to build their businesses. Really appreciate that. I would move very swiftly now to Lanre for your insights on the agribusiness ecosystem in Nigeria. And of course, if we can expand that to Africa, to the whole of Africa, fantastic. So what impact have the various factors around your business ecosystem? What are the impacts on your business operations? And how have you been able to navigate the ecosystem and build your business?
Right. So the first thing I would like to say about this is I generally believe that agribusinesses are the front line of the reflection of states of a lot of African countries, right? Like we had discussed earlier, like Peter had said earlier, most of the African countries spend a bulk of, most households in the African countries spend a bulk of their income on food and other consumables. I would say in Nigeria, especially coming back down to Nigeria, it's not with a lot of challenges, right? Running agribusiness, especially for us, is we do more of like processing and manufacturing. I would say it's like everyone would know, that kind of business is very capital intensive, and funding and access to funding, the right funding, not just funding, the right funding, long-term cheap funding is, like we all know in Nigeria, is almost impossible. But we've been able to find some ways to tackle that issue. Also, very importantly, is the constant increase in cost of raw materials. Like I said in the last question, activities of people like middlemen also will hoard some of these raw materials, and then lack of access, direct access to the farmers also, because of the issue of the whole system, the whole ecosystem is in fragments, also increases the price, and also makes us have quite a big issue of getting the raw materials. Let's take, for example, one of our product lines, in the last 1 year, the prices of the raw materials have increased over 150%. How are you supposed to compete while still trying to make enough margin to satisfy your stakeholders? I'll say it's one of the major issues that we have in food production generally in Nigeria. And then, you don't want to go into the issues of, the dwindling, the devaluation of our currency here in Nigeria, which will affect your packaging and also all the other raw materials that you use. So I believe that generally, even with the government policies, government should create more conducive policies that would create a conducive environment for people to thrive. I believe in Nigeria here, there's so many people, so many young people who have amazing ideas. Once you sit down and you engage with them, they're hardworking, they have so many ideas, but I feel like we have to just have a conducive environment. I don't have enough time to go into step by step all the different issues we've had with setting up our production plant and everything, but I understand that there's so many people who want to do this, but when I sit down and engage them and I tell them so many things, can be very discouraging. About how we've been able to navigate through the ecosystem, I'll say you cannot overemphasize the importance of a good team. And when I say a team, I'm not just talking about people who work directly with us in the company. We talk about even the whole supply chain, right? People who, all the way from our suppliers of raw materials, all the way down to our distributors. We've been fortunate to have quite amazing people that we work with, and that's also helped. Another thing also is leveraging technology. When you're starting a business, especially in agribusiness, food production, no matter how small it is, make sure you try as much as possible to have, even if it's a small enterprise management system, it helps you to be able to project, to be able to keep track of everything. And that has really helped for us. Using technology like that has been able to help us to cut down a lot of costs, especially in these times when margin is really tight, and then also to have more efficient operations.
Thank you so much, Larry, for sharing those. In the interest of time, I would now move finally to Peter. And I would like to end this panel discussion talking about money, very important for us youth, So what are the funding mechanisms that young people can explore to launch and accelerate their startup in less than 60 seconds?
Wow, okay, money. So here's my belief. My belief is that, Africa is gonna succeed. I believe Africa has the money. We just need to move the money from some other continents back home, right? So the people who are succeeding, from what I'm hearing Josephine, Landry, and Peter talking about, is teams that know that this is gonna be difficult, but everyone is always thinking out the box, right? So the first thing I would do as a young person, if I'm super young and I'm just getting into this, one, I would figure out mentorship, right? And my networks. So I probably would go and try and figure out, okay, Landry, can I work with you guys for 3 months? Even if I'm working for free, I need to figure out how to do value addition. And can I go to Josephine and figure out something, about foods, to Peter and figure out distribution, right? I would be really, really hungry for education, because we can't conquer $1 trillion market by not being super, super smart. And this is why I think, African, Nourishing Africa comes in, to integrate these kinds of brains and bring us together. That's the first thing. Second, as Landry said, technology, you cannot, Africa will leapfrog, and we cannot do things the way we've done it traditionally, right? We have to leverage technology to be able to leapfrog gatekeepers. You talked about kind of getting certifications. I think Africa needs to start finding our own certifications that can be trusted globally. We need to be able to think outside the box. Finally, if you look at money in Africa, maybe now fintech is starting to kind of like overtake agriculture, but most of the money coming in financing is in agriculture, right? So the one way I'd look at it is, how can I use blended financing mechanisms to build my company? Most of us are really good either at grants, at venture capital, at raising from our friends and family. I think this is like, you have to tap into every one of these mechanisms to build a big company. How that comes together is what Josephine and Peter said. You have to have a story, right? Everyone is interested in backing big companies, right? And I think something that I see a lot of youth kind of missing the point is, while they build a big company for their neighborhood or for their county, for their province, most people are backing companies that can become the next big global trend. I'm gonna end by saying something that Peter mentioned. The bigger companies in, for example, the United States, or the place when people benchmark where the United States started, is 150 years ago. So you look at big companies like Carnegie or Monsanto, those companies started a while back, right? So what I want to see is, who are the entrepreneurs today who have a vision that can last 100 years. If you think you're that kind of person, then I think the community will back you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Peter, for sharing. In fact, you've actually really captured the whole conversation on this panel today, and I wouldn't even bother to do that again. So I would like to say a huge thank you to all of you panelists today. Peter of Twiggy Foods, Peter of Relibird, and Landry, and of course, Josephine, for sharing such awesome insights with us today. It's been a great learning experience moderating this panel. And now I'll hand over to Aisha. Thank you all, and have a wonderful day.
Sante.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Ramat. Thank you very much to our distinguished panelists. And thank you very much for our participants that are listening in. Without further ado, we will move on to the breakout sessions. At this particular point in time, you would see a prompt, but then before you click on the prompt, we are going to discuss our two experts that are coming on the breakout sessions. So you can pick and choose which experts, which room you enter into. So the first person is Chef Winifred. Chef Winnie Emmanuel is a food blogger, a food consultant, blogger, and producer of Zelicious Cooking Show. She's also the founder of Zelicious Foods Company, a company that cares so much about providing varied, healthy, mouth-watering, and balanced diet meals, whether it is in the form of a scripted recipe, a video tutorial, delivering homemade meals to your doorsteps, or providing products and services that make life in the kitchen a lot easier for you. Hey, Chef Winnie, are you in the room?
Hi, Aisha. Hi, everyone.
Hi,
yes,
thank you for being here. And our second expert in the room is Nouran Al-Zaid. And Nouran is the co-founder of Plug and Grow, an agri-tech startup that provides precision agriculture solutions based on hydroponics and aquaponics. She's very passionate about agri-tech industry, building startups, raising funds, and is a very strong believer in the magic of collaborations and its ability to grow businesses and achieve growth. She's also the co-founder of Zon Gardens, an enterprise established to promote the collaboration between businesses and academia in the field of green technologies, serving the water, energy, and food sectors in the Euro-Mediterranean region. She actually studied science and psychology with the dream of improving livelihoods through human rights policies. But as a professional, Nuran decided to capitalize on her education, experience, and potential to build fast-growing startups that still offer tailored solutions for pressing challenges such as food and water security, especially in developing countries on our continent. Thank you very much for joining us, and you can pick and choose, like I said, which breakout room you enter. Please, this is an interactive session, and feel free to put in your questions to the experts. Off we go. So I would be in the main room in case you have connection issues and then you drop out. Please feel free to reconnect and I will put you back in the room of your choice.
Okay.
And also please do let us know if you are unable to pick a room or you're finding trouble finding the prompt. Immediately after the session, it's about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, we should be right back into the main room. Okay, so we have two rooms, only two breakout rooms, and one is one-on-one with Chef Zilicious, and that is where you can enter to have conversations and ask questions to directed at the chef. And then the second room is one-on-one with Nuran Al-Zaid, and that is where you can ask Nuran all the questions regarding modern farming techniques, aeroponics, All right, so I can still see quite a number of persons that haven't joined the room yet. Please check the bottom right of your screen for the prompt so that you can join one of the two rooms. If you have a preferred room, also you're having problems joining, you can put that in the chat, which one you would like, and we can manually move you to the room of your choice. Welcome back for the people that are back from their main session, from their breakout sessions. We're just waiting for our other participants and other colleagues to trickle back into the main room, and we will proceed. Hello, everyone. Please click on the Leave Room tab at the bottom of your screen so that you can come back to the main session. And your breakout rooms will be closing in a few seconds. And welcome back, everyone. I do believe the session with Chef Winnie has ended, and most of us from that session are back into the room. I hope that you had an insightful discussion with the chef and had some of your questions answered. And as mentioned during the group, please do not forget to follow the chef and so that you can continue conversations that way. Also, not to forget to follow the buzz that is going on our social media handles. We will drop them on the chat box so that you can drop your key takeaways from these panel discussions and breakout sessions and keynote speech, anything you want to carry on, because this is how we keep the conversation going on. Okay, and I can see some of us are already utilizing the chat box to network and connect with other persons. Good afternoon, Cyprian from Ebonyi State. Thank you very much for joining. And as promised, our social media handles are in the chat box now. Thank you, Ramat, for posting. Please feel free to follow, post, and tag us. Don't forget to use the hashtag SSC 2021, Sahel Scholars Conference 2021. There it is. Thank you. Just 60 more seconds and then we will proceed. Hi, Hanifa. I'm just seeing your chat now from Ibadan. Thank you very much for joining. And I'm sorry you weren't able to join the breakout session. But yes, the session is being recorded and we are currently live streaming on YouTube. So you should have the ability to go back and check. We will share the link on that if you could just drop your email. Is Hanifa, if you check your chat box, you would see the link to the YouTube. And thank you very much, Abdulrazak, for joining from Niger State. And I think by now our breakout room should be closed. Oh, Colette, I'm so sorry you had technical issues and couldn't join. Please feel free to go on YouTube. Right, thank you very much, everyone. I do believe all breakout rooms have been closed and we're all back into the main room. Thank you very much to our experts, Nuran and Chef Winnie of Zilicious. It's an honor having you around and giving young persons on call an opportunity to ask you the pressing questions that they do want to ask. And of course, thank you very much to our amazing participants and then also our amazing moderators as well.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being here.
Thank you. Okay, so I have no doubts that we have all benefited greatly from the event so far. And of course, we would encourage you to keep the conversation going on social media and tag us. And our social media handles are in the chat box. It's now time for us to take our closing remarks. And for this, we would like to call on Temi Adegore, partner at Sahel Consulting, Agriculture and Nutrition Limited, to give us the vote of thanks. Just a little bit about Temi. As partner, he leads the Sahel stakeholder engagement activities in the Abuja office, as well as multiple other projects. Thank you very much, Temi. Please go ahead.
Okay, thanks so much, Aisha. You hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Right, thanks so much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This has been an inspiring and a thought-provoking conference. I must say that there is no better time to hold such conference to discuss how young people are shaping the future of food on the African continent, and also highlight the tremendous opportunities that exist in the African food ecosystem for the youth to explore, of course. I have enjoyed listening to the two informative panel discussion sessions. The first on how young people are creating the food ecosystem of the future, leveraging innovation and technology. In the second session, empowering the African youth to be resilient and sustainable agribusinesses, to tap into the $1 trillion agri-food industry. And of course, the experience sharing and the breakout sessions is what have been very wonderful. We've heard today that Africa is projected to nearly double its size by 2050, with the population hitting about 2.5 billion. This presents opportunities for growth and economic diversification. And of course, you would agree with me that the food system sits at the heart of any economic transformation plan. So as part of my closing remarks for this year's class conference, I would like to build on the insights from the discussions. I encourage all participants to, for me, I would say, change your mindset about the potential across the African continent, particularly in the food ecosystem in Africa. You know, put on your thinking caps, explore the opportunities in the agricultural landscape. We've heard from the panelists today that challenges abound in the African agricultural landscape, which present opportunities to leverage different solutions, you know, such as agtech and other enablers to provide solutions to the issues that we're facing. So as scholars and key stakeholders in the food ecosystem, I would say get involved. You know, draw up a business model, get mentors, seek partnerships, leverage existing knowledge and resources, you know, by joining platforms like Nourishing Africa. We've talked a lot about Nourishing Africa today. You can unlock the significant opportunities in the landscape. On behalf of the management and entire teams at Sahel Consulting, Sahel Capital, and Nourishing Africa, I say a huge thanks to all our amazing speakers and panelists for making all the time out of their obviously busy schedules as entrepreneurs and business leaders. Thank you so much for joining the conference. Thank you for joining and sharing all these enriching insights with all the participants. We look forward, of course, to inviting you to future scholars conferences. Also, I want to thank all participants for joining and contributing to a successful Sahel Scholars Conference this year. I believe strongly that we will have the opportunity to be together again in 2022 to celebrate and learn from our food champions across the continent, as we, of course, continue to transform the food ecosystem across Africa. Well, before I close, I want to appreciate my amazing colleagues, you know, who, in addition to their deliverables, actually committed ample time to planning this conference. Thank you so much, this wonderful team. Thank you. God bless you all for your participation and for your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Timmy. Thank you very much for that rousing closing remarks, which also sounds to me as a call to action to everyone on this call. We need to start being thought leaders and problem solvers in our own region so that we can better shape the future of our continent. Once again, thank you to all our participants, all our speakers, all our moderators, and everybody for your wonderful support and engagement. Remember that you can continue the conversation on social media. Enjoy the rest of your day, and God bless you all. Thank you.